I am super excited about the conversation that we're about to have today. If you're excited to hear from Dr. Chawla, go ahead and put excited in the chat box because I promise you, most of us in our careers, we're looking to change, but not just change or pivot. We want to be fulfilled when we do that. And if that is you, get your pen and paper ready because I promise you, Dr. Chawla is going to rock your world and blow your mind. I'm just ready, just like all of you. So for those of you who are not familiar with who this amazing and awesome woman is, get ready for a shift. Or maybe you want to shift, but you're not sure how to shift. Well, she is the person that can make sure that you are not freaking out as you're thinking about your next career move, as well as how do you find fulfillment in that next role. So if that sounds like you are in the right room right now. So this interactive session with Dr. Sweta Chawla, she is a former professor of pharmacy and a clinical and residency director turned speaker, author, and coach. Dr. Chawla also has been there, done that, and literally can write a book for it and have a t-shirt with that saying on it as well. And she has developed some tools that you can use to transition in your career and make it easier with the transition. So in this session, you're going to discover what's possible for you and your career while shining a light on what really is holding you back, how to take a more holistic view on your career so that you can have greater happiness and fulfillment and also clarity to the next steps to build a bridge from where you are right now in your career to where you want to be. Dr. Chawla, how you feeling today?
Oh my God, I'm so pumped. I need to whip out my purple lipstick.
Listen, purple lipstick for everybody, especially in the career change, right? Why not? So listen, if you were used to wearing, let's say, nude lipstick, maybe part of your career change is wearing purple lipstick or pink lipstick. I mean, hey, why not, right?
You know what? That it sounds kind of like, this is not where I expected to start off with, but I love that this is where we're starting with because I think it names something that is something that gets in the way of career pivots, which is we think we have to be these big changes, right? And why do people want to pivot right now? It's like, this whole message out there, something that's been under the surface for so long, but it's finally out. Everybody's talking about it. People are tired of like sacrificing who they are, like being inauthentic, doing work that they don't love to climb a ladder and then realize maybe this isn't what I really wanted. And when we think about change, when we think about shift, it's usually like, oh, I gotta upload my whole entire life. And that feels incredibly overwhelming. But something that you spoke to is that it doesn't have to be that big. Like, you don't have to eat, pray, love your life. You can make micro shifts. You can, find fulfillment exactly where you are, or maybe you do need to change. That's really depends on the person. But for me, for example, changing my clothes at the workplace actually made a huge shift in how I started to feel in my own work. So there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely. And you touched on something. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that because we really want to take advantage of your experience and your expertise. And, how do people know, right? Like, is there a trigger? Do they wake up one day and be like, I just want to do something different? Is it like, you know what? I'm so used to wearing black and brown and beige to work, and I really want to wear purple lipstick to work, right? What are some of the signs or triggers? Like, it's time to change. It's time to pivot. It's trying for something new in my career. What can people be aware of?
Well, that's such a great question. I mean, the first thing that I want to name is that when you're in like a career for a certain amount of time, right? There's something that's keeping you there. There's probably something that you're enjoying about this job. So it's not like, it's a always a soul sucking job where I like have to get out, because it's easy to make change when things are awful. But when there are things that feel good about your job, then you have mixed emotions around it, and that's sometimes harder to tell. So the signs can be subtle. They can be things like my telltale sign, like Monday morning blues, right? Like I think a lot of people feel this. It's like, oh, Sunday night you start to feel that, like, oh, that dread. I don't want to go into work. Or you look at your calendar and you look at the things that you have to do for that day, and there's not a level of like joy and excitement. That there's more of that, like, oh, it's like a heavy energy, right? Or you're feeling anxious, you're constantly thinking about your way out, or like, if I can just get through this, right, then I'll be fine. It's really about thinking about how you are feeling when you think about your work. So again, it can be really subtle. And again, if you things are not terrible, sometimes it can be really hard to make changes.
Mm. I mean, that's something right there. I mean, things don't have to be terrible. You don't have to be like, oh my gosh, I hate going to work. It could just be the yearning of something new. And I want you to talk about like that. I think sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to pivot. We feel like it has to be something detrimental. Maybe, we're not getting treated fairly or the company culture is not what we want it to be. But it could just be like, it's just time for something new. Can you talk about that? Because sometimes I feel like we get guilty for wanting to leave and nothing's wrong per se.
Yeah. Oh my God. You are just naming my journey. So I was a professor of pharmacy, as you all heard in my interview. I had an amazing job. I had like 10 to 15 weeks vacation in the summer, right? I had a lot of variety. My work was meaningful. So when I woke up, I literally did wake up one morning and was like, I want more. And I didn't know what that more was. And I didn't want more. Like I didn't want more to do. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling right now. They don't want more to do, but there's this feeling of there's something more. And what that more is your potential. There's something inside of you that knows that perhaps like you're made for something maybe different, or maybe to show up more fully in your job. But when you think about it, it comes up as like looking for a problem to be able to give yourself permission to want more, as opposed to just saying, I want more. It's so different than the way that we think about things, right? It's always like, let's fix a problem as opposed to going from good to great. A lot of the clients that I work with, I even have a blog called The Curse of Being Good, because a lot of people that I work with, especially when you're at mid-career, we're Gen Xers. Gen Xers know how to make the best of situations. And we didn't receive the message that's so like the younger generation receives now, right? Like that work is supposed to be fulfilling, that you're supposed to love what you do, that work doesn't have to be the central aspect of your life. It's not just about working hard, putting your head down and waiting for somebody to notice you so that you can get to like a certain level. That whole narrative is changing. But if you've grown up in like as a baby boomer, as Gen Xer, you're like, well, okay, but I don't know how to operate in this new way. And when we think about what we have been told, how we have created success in our life, it's around sacrificing your authenticity, sacrificing what you want, your time, your hours, sacrificing, holding back your full expression. And so when we come up against that, our nervous systems, our brain is like, whoa, like, more, but more means I have to do scary things. And that can definitely hold people back from making a pivot.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I just want you to know they are loving this conversation so far. Taisha says she's excited. Mary's excited. Eleanor's excited. Rhonda's excited. Maya's excited to be here, as well as Christine and Erica and Sharon. They are all excited to be and have and on this conversation. So there was a couple of different things that you said, because I feel like you're especially right. If you are pivoting, you're changing, you are looking at a different career move, depending on what generation you're in, that could look different for you, right? So let's talk about that for a second there, because you mentioned Gen Xers, you got baby boomers who could be transitioning. You also have the millennial generation. Can you talk to, what that transition looks like, maybe from a generation standpoint, and give some tips? Because if you're a baby boomer looking to transition, you might feel a little bit uncomfortable, like, wait a minute, these young kids out here might outwork me, and then vice versa. I just want to kind of talk about that a little bit, because you're right. I mean, the fact that my mother, is like, so let me get this straight, people pay you to talk. She just doesn't understand it. She's just like, Quinn doesn't have a job. I swear she doesn't, But talk about that for a second. How can you have the confidence and the courage to pivot no matter what generation that you're in?
Oh, this is such a juicy conversation. And it's definitely something I hear all the time when people come to me, to consider creating work they love to find more fulfillment. One of the top things that comes up is imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And it's like, well, if I'm, I studied all this time, I have all this experience, and I'm going to throw it away and try to be a beginner again, right? So there's a lot of things that come up with that. One is like, I don't want to start over. I don't want to work hard again. I don't want to have to so one thing I've noticed is that people like immediately when they think about career pivot is like, I have to get a new degree. And it's like, no, you don't necessarily have to get a new degree, right? Those are the things that stop them. The other thing is, like you said, there's all these other generations. They're younger, they're technology, they're quicker with technology, et cetera. And what I want to say is, look, I'm not going to lie. There is some truth to that, right? There is some truth that there's this learning curve. There's things that we don't know, maybe that are new to us. And there's a lot that comes with experience. when for any organization, any job, for it to be really successful, you want innovation, but you also want experience. And when we look at just a resume and we're thinking, well, my degree doesn't qualify, and we throw that out and we don't look at like, well, who were we in that job? And what's the connection point to what we want to do that, like, that we can leverage? I mean, for example, for me, I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm an author. And I tell my son all the time, I used to get in trouble for speaking and now I get paid for it.
It's beautiful, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah. And it was a matter of like, if I look at this as a completely new profession, then of course I'm going to feel overwhelmed. Of course I'm going to feel discouraged. But when I look at the elements of what I loved about my previous job, it was the speaking, it was helping the students. And that's what I would love for anybody that's thinking about a mid-career pivot is, what do you love about your job now? What are the things that really light you up? Because again, most people don't fully hate their job. It's just that they're ready for a change. Maybe, they're ready to do, be more of themselves in the world. They feel a calling to share in a different way, right? You're not starting from scratch. Really identify what it is that you love about your job now. And then think about what are, career pivots or, any areas that you're curious about. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to like look for a job. You don't have to, try to qualify for it. It's really about following your curiosity and have some conversations with people. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. This is not even like, I'm a social person. It seems that I love to talk, but personal outreach to say like, I'm curious about what the work you do was very, very scary for me. But I can tell you without a doubt, and I've coached people through this too, who are just like, they feel insecure. And the last thing you want to do is talk to somebody when you're feeling insecure about where you are at work, right? But if you get support, so like I worked with a coach when I was going through my own career pivot, this is what I help people with. The first action is the hardest, right? But what we tend to do is when we think about a change, we create a problem at step 10 before taking step 1. And so my invitation for you is to take step 1, and step 1 is small. It could be changing your lipstick at work, and then you experience it, and then you're like, oh my God, I didn't die. Then it comes to putting on a different piece of clothing. Maybe it's like you raise your hand and you say one thing at work that normally you wouldn't give yourself permission to do. Like, start super small. You're going to reach out to one person that you're curious about their career, and just, people love to talk about themselves. And I've had people say to me, well, I don't have anything to give. Like if I call to someone, it's like they think that they're not prepared enough, they're not experienced enough, and that it's really about like them giving, when it's really about, people love to talk about themselves. You're asking somebody about their story, and it's about paying attention to what do you connect to? It's like, the little breadcrumb to just get you to the next step.
Yeah, you said so much there. I'm telling you, if you are listening, watching this, and you're not picking up what she's putting down, like I'm literally taking notes as well. And just so much good information that you're sharing with us today. And there was a question that kind of came through in the chat box, and I really want you to talk about it a little bit because it really, I think you can provide some great insight. And then I want to follow this up with, what can people do, or what action steps can people actually listening to take place, taking consideration if they're with a mid-career pivot. And this is really common, right? So it's easier, or I should say maybe less intimidating, if you want to pivot from one career to like a new position. But what if you are completely transitioning to another industry? So for example, we have a person who's watching now, she's in software testing, and she wants to pivot or change and find fulfillment in a completely different role. And you mentioned, and you talked about it, like, does that mean she has to get a new degree? What does that look like? Because that can be kind of scary and overwhelming, especially if you have decades of experience in one industry, you want to change to something else. So that's like a double transition that can be a little overwhelming. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand how that can be completely overwhelming. And I'm not going to say like, no, you don't have to go back to school and get another degree. In some situations, you might have to. But before you think about all of that and you kind of scare yourself out of taking an action step, the first thing that I would invite this person to do is the career that they're curious about, that they're attracted to, that they're thinking about, I would like for them to write down, what is it about that position and that job that excites them? To get really
Mm.
clear at what they're looking for. There's a saying which is like the devil is in the details. And one of the things that again holds people back is that the details that they're looking for are like the how as opposed to the what. Like,
Mm.
what is it about my job that I don't like? What is it about this path that I'm kind of interested in, that I'm curious about. And then when you can write those down, and I have a clarity tool that I'm going to be, we'll probably talk about more. But it walks you through this. It walks you through various questions to ask yourself so that you can get clear on what is fulfillment for you, because so many of us don't even really know, right? Like, when are we ever asked that question? It's always about like, what success, we have a definition of success that's oftentimes not our own definition. It's been put on us by the society or by our family. And so we're following the path to success that we think will make us happy, but we've never paused to actually say, well, what would fulfillment really be for me? And so that's the very first step. So, look at where you want to go. What is it about it that you're excited about, that you're intrigued about? Because that can give you a sign of what fulfillment would be, right, for you. And then start to, the next step would be, okay, well, are there any other places in my current job that I can find that? Not because I want you to stay in your job. That's not the reason. What I want you to do is get used to looking at work as a place to be fulfilled, right? And it's not about being selfish. It's that the more fulfilled you are, the better work you're going to do. It's better for your organization, right? So when you can know what fulfills you and you can actually speak to it, you can redesign again within a career, outside of a career, in a new position as well. But that's the very first step, is what is it that right now in this season. That's the other thing, is this tool that I'm going to share about. It's about, not making, like, we think about long-term change, and that's how we scare ourselves, right? Because the brain does not like change. Even if it's better for you, the brain does not like change. It likes familiarity. So it will do anything to keep you safe and keep you comfortable. If you're trying to rock things up, oh my God, your nervous system's going to go, right? So start off small. And so we start off with a season. Like, in this next season, what would fulfillment feel like? And then it becomes a muscle for associating work with fulfillment, again, in service to the better work you do, the better it's going to be for your organization.
I mean, that was just a whole mic drop moment dissertation on change, right? It is. We were scared. We're looking at the finish line and we haven't even started the race. So I love that. Now, you mentioned this tool that I know that will be super beneficial to everybody, who's listening, watching. If you're interested in this clarity tool, just type clarity in the comments, because I want to know if you want this tool that she has. We're going to drop it in the box. But before we do that, I want to know if you are here and you're interested in this tool. Type clarity in the box, and then I'm going to have Dr. Chawla talk about this particular clarity tool that can really be beneficial as you decide to change, to pivot, but more importantly, do that with fulfillment. And it's so interesting that you're mentioning the word fulfillment, because I believe that in the past, people would change jobs just for money. I want more money. I want more money. Now it's just like, the money, I'm actually making it, but I'm not fulfilled. So fulfillment is like a whole new thing. But listen, I mean, the chat box is going crazy for you. Brandy, Mig says clarity. Kanita says clarity. Elena, Pamela says clarity. Donna says clarity. Felicia, Teresa, Eleanor, Debbie, they're all saying clarity. So let's not make them wait any longer. If we can go ahead and drop that link, and if you can talk about this clarity tool that you're dropping in the box that could be beneficial for everyone watching, that would be wonderful.
Okay, just dropped it in there. It's called the Name Your North Star Clarity Tool. And what you talked about was so true. So many of us think that more money is automatically going to make us more fulfilled. But there's actually studies done out there. The big tech companies, they have all those amenities, right? Like free coffee and this and this and that. And that's exciting at first, but there's data that shows that doesn't keep people there. Most people, what they're really looking for in their job is a way for them to be able to really fully share their gifts in a way that it'll be received. They want to make a difference, right? They want meaning, they want passion in their work. And look, getting paid well is important too. That can be part of your fulfillment, right? But not at the sacrifice of the other things that you value. And so when I work with my coaching clients, we do a deep dive and really getting to focus on you and get to know yourself. Give yourself time and space to reflect. And that can be scary for some people. And for some people, they don't even know, like, what do I ask? What are the things that I do if I give space to reflect, right? So that's where working with a coach is really helpful. But initially, one of the things you could do is like use the tools, one of the tools that I share with my clients. Again, it's a Name Your North Star Clarity tool. It's in the chat. And it's a video and a worksheet that will guide you through 4 questions that will help you to be able to identify what true fulfillment is. And the thing that I love about this tool is that a lot of my clients are like, I don't want to do more, right? We're tired, we're exhausted. And one of the unique questions in my clarity tool is what needs to be released? And it's amazing when you can let go what creativity, what opportunities, what things come in the way. And when we talk about release, that could be maybe you need to physically take a break, get on a sabbatical, or leave your job. But oftentimes it's usually the mindsets, right? It's the,
Yes.
the conflicting priorities we have, the belief that we're not going to be supported if we go for what we love, right? So much of it has to do with, our surroundings and the messages that we hear. And so when you can name that and actively release that and open yourself up to seeing an opportunity of both and so like I had a client, for example, who she was like, I want to do work I love. I want to be able to be more authentic. I want flexibility. And I want to be able to keep my side gig. She was doing some side projects. In her mind, she was like, that wasn't possible because every time she's worked, she had to sacrifice those things. And so then, she tried to do it as a side gig, but then it was hard it takes time to build money. She needed money. So through this clarity tool, she went through it. I helped her to clear a very clear intention for herself that included both and what she wanted and what was in the way of it. I tell you not, kid you not, within a month, she applied for a job and she was so herself. She gets to work. She got the job. She's able to work from home. She can keep her side gigs, right? All the things that she was worried about. And it was because this intention helped her to be able to show up in the way that she wanted to be in the job. A lot of times people like put on a performance or they kind of shift who they are so that they can get something. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, right? But if you can be true to yourself as you're going through the process of pivoting, you will end up fulfilled.
Oh my goodness. So you just said so much. I want to wrap that up in a bow. I mean, first and foremost, write this down if you didn't hear, Dr. Sweta say this, but you can have fulfillment without sacrifice. Like that just kind of goes against everything you must heard, right? Like fulfillment without sacrifice. And also too, I wrote it down, just the power of and. It's almost like we believe that we can have this or this, but we can't have this and this, right? So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that a little bit, and the chat box is still going crazy. You mentioned earlier a little bit about studies being shown. They're offering pizza, they're offering like all kinds of stuff. And one of the participants were Courtney wrote, "You can keep your pizza. It's not about the pizza; it's about the fulfillment, like you're talking about." So they're letting you know that you are definitely just nailing this with the tips. And again, she dropped a tool, a clarity tool, answer these questions so you can really have intention about your next move. So I know we have about 5 minutes left, and I really want to just maximize your genius while we still have you. If you're enjoying the conversation so far, just put enjoy in the comments. Is this making sense to you? Are you taking notes? Did you download that clarity tool? We want to know. We want to make sure this is resonating with you. Myself and the Power to Fly team just wants to make sure that you are getting the best out of this. So, I want to kind of ask you this, there's a couple of things that you mentioned, but if you had to get started, right? Because a lot of times when we get this information, it's just like, oh my gosh, should I download the clarity tool? Should I write down, how I can get fulfillment now? Where do we start without overwhelm? Because again, if you go to Google University, that's what I call it, and you type in fulfillment or how to successfully career change, it's just like, will this or will not work? But where do I start? Because you've given so many good tips and good tools. If I'm looking to change, if I'm looking to make a career move, whether same industry, different industry, maybe I want to go from being an employee to a supervisor or from a supervisor to the C-suite, where is just a practical starting point?
Yeah. This seems like an easy thing, but I cannot tell you how it can be really hard for some people. It was very hard for me. Is to really name, what is it that you want? Like, what is it that you really want? When you think about, I want the C-suite or I want to switch to this new role, right? Why? Like, why? What is underneath it? And when you can name it, and like you use the word permission, like for so many of us, it's really hard for us to give ourselves permission for what we want, because again, there's a consequence to it, right? If I do what I want, I won't be able to provide health insurance for my family. That was mine. Like I was the breadwinner for my family. And I was like, we have a preemie at home. If I do what I want, which is like to, consider leaving pharmacy, who's going to pay the mortgage? Like, how are we going to get healthcare? these things feel very real. So I don't want to like undermine them, and they are real as well, right? But my ask here for you is to give yourself permission just to name and explore and to write down what is it that you really want and why, without the what, without the like, oh, but I can't have it, right? Those are there. We'll deal with those. I'm not gonna say we're not gonna, but I don't want you to water down your what you really want because you think you can't get it.
I mean, explore what you want without judgment. And a lot of times, we're not even judging, nobody else is judging us. We're judging ourselves. There's no way I can host something and wear purple lipstick with purple streaks, right? Like, this is the kind of stuff that I used to believe, right? But that thing that you explore, I mean, that is just an attraction opportunity, for that thing to come your way. So listen, our time is almost coming to the end. I need more time. I need to tell somebody, like, we need more time next time. If people are loving this conversation and they might want more tips, I know that you dropped that great clarity link there. But how can people connect with you afterwards? I saw some people asking, how can we connect with the speaker? Do you prefer LinkedIn? Do you prefer Instagram? How can people connect with you after this conversation?
Both and. I'm Dr. Sweta Chawla. My website is Dr. Sweta Chawla. My LinkedIn is Dr. Sweta Chawla, and so is my Instagram. I love connecting with people. So please reach out if you have a question. I have workshops. I have lots of free resources on my website, blogs, different recordings that you can, dive in. And that's another great place to start, is surround yourself with information, with people that live in possibility, because that's really what is going to allow you to take those mighty but courageous steps. That first step is the hardest. But when you take that one, boy, will you see a possibility unfold that you didn't even imagine. You didn't know how that would unfold.
Live in possibility. Words to live by, words to leave on, words to chew on. I like that. Live in possibility, because so many people are living in doubt, living in fear, living in the what ifs. So I just absolutely love that. I just want to thank everyone for joining us for this wonderful conversation. I know that my job is to make sure I pull out the genius in Dr. Sweta, and I think I did a pretty good job. This is why the Power to Fly team asked her to come. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and keep this Power to Fly Summit going. I know that Meg is probably going to jump back on with her wonderful purple and pink hair. So I'm going to pass the mic back over. And again, thank you everyone for joining us on this session. Meg, the stage is yours.